Interview with the Finance Minister, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, and part of this interview is of course the ETNA Consulting Editor Swaminathan Aiyar, and as my senior it's only appropriate he begins the interview.
Yes, well, the budget has had a poor reaction from the markets. The Sensex is down almost 1,000 points. What do you think they have misunderstood or properly understood? Lack of a stimulus? Is it that the off-budget borrowing is so much that they are not impressed by your fiscal deficit figure? Do you think it is some other understanding or misunderstanding? So of these things, why do you think the market has reacted so badly?
No, to be fair to them, I think today the stock market was not in its full force. And I guess we'll have to wait till Monday.
Okay.
So today's reaction I would not conclude anything with. As regards any of those factors that you are saying,
Stimulus,
I thought we've been very responsible in the way in which we have given our numbers. Not just by using the 0.5% forbearance clause, not just saying that it's time to splurge, we will, because it's important that we show that we are spending because the situation demands so. No, even in that, we have said very clearly, private investments will happen when it will happen. We fully appreciate that. Towards that, we've already given a corporate tax rate cut. And I'm sure it will happen in its due time. But in the meanwhile, should the government be spending or not? And the government has been spending. And the growth in the capex in the last 7-8 months is there for everyone to see. Now, will we continue doing that? Yes, of course. And the Prime Minister had spoken about 100 lakh crores within the next 5 years. I've been stating this, that I'm willing to do this right up front as soon as I get a project. We've announced as of December 31st, 6,500 projects all becoming a part of the pipeline. So our expenditure commitment on infrastructure is well on course. So the stimulus, I would think, is also partly through that.
Okay.
Ma'am, if I could also ask you the ambitious disinvestment target, you have given us some details of that, especially in the press conference. But you know, coming out of a year where we have missed the disinvestment target, you're also relying a lot on the spectrum auction. And given the state of the telecom companies, the kind of noises you're also getting from Vodafone, haven't you been very ambitious on that front?
Well, see, to be fair to the disinvestment department, it was July when I announced it. And by February, they've done all the necessary legwork, tying up of the loose ends, and it's going to happen in a couple of months. Certainly, I will not benefit in this financial year by their sale. But it's also not that they're not doing anything. You see, they've reached the EOI stage in Air India. In Concor and other things, they're moving fast. Even as they're doing it, they have also, on a completely different matter, the ETF, they've been working and showed success. So I think we have to be just fair to them. To say that it's not happening is not the matter. It is going to happen in the next financial year, and the benefit of that is not going to accrue to me this year. That's about the story.
Do we see? I have now watched this not just in your term, but now for so many terms. Again and again, there's a budget announcement, and nothing happens for 3-4 months. And somebody says, you know, half the year over, we haven't done anything. There's a rush to try and get the privatization in the last 1-2 months. Surely you need a situation where work on privatization begins the day after the budget. There should be a specific template that when the political issues have been got out of the way and you said go, after that automatically within 3 months or 4 months, don't you need to create a template of this kind so that every single privatization does not become ab initio a case on its own?
I fully agree, and that is where I think this time the disinvestment team that has been working has been absolutely on that kind of a course. The moment they had got the clearance, they started moving, they've done the road shows, the documents have been readied, legally vetted, and the process is happening, and now that will be the template.
I see. And the names, You give, of course, BPCL Container Corporation you mentioned, LIC has been mentioned. Any other names?
IDBI also mentioned.
IDBI. Yes,
I read it out in the.
But as you say, you start in 1 year, it spills over. So which are you going to start
No,
in the next year, which may then spill over?
Well, I'm not commenting on your experience-based comment, but the fact is, in my case, at least between July and February, which is today, we've done considerable concrete work on Air India, on other BPCL and everything else. So I think this template should not be put through the test of moving into a second financial year.
So ma'am, while we're talking about this, you have the US economy in recovery mode. There's talk of flight of capital, the fear of flight of capital. You've of course taken a big step with the abolishment of the dividend distribution tax. But do you think more could have been done to make sure that our capital markets indeed stay very robust? For example, there was a large expectation around the long-term capital gains tax. As it is, we're not collecting that much on it, but just could have been acted as a sentiment booster.
At this rate, you'll tell me everything that which is not done and forget what I've done. Even before the day is over, you've forgotten what I've done in the form of removing DDT. I would want you to keep that alive for some more time. Even that aims at the markets.
Because of the flight of capital, the fear of flight of capital.
That's all very well taken. The point is, I've addressed DDT. I've addressed personal income tax. I've addressed corporate tax. And all at a time when you were telling me situation is challenging, economy is going through a tough time. Even in spite of all that, we have been bold enough to take a considered call on all this. I would appeal to you to highlight these rather than but LTCG.
There's an attempt to catch rich people who are trying to escape tax and become NRIs. You've increased the definition of NRI from 182 days abroad to 240 days abroad. And there appears to be that if somebody is in a zero tax jurisdiction, he will pay tax on what? On his all India income, all world income. And by doing, this is an interesting idea. The question is then will people simply give up citizenship altogether and then you lose whatever little that you get. So do you have any numbers on how many people do you think you can catch by this particular device?
It's
and
not
what
a question
revenue?
of catching. It's more a question of recognizing that here is an area in which, for want of clarity, you are losing out on a lot of people who are neither paying here nor paying elsewhere.
So I think it's very clear. They want to escape tax.
But then if my taxes are now so favorable, I would rather have them be here and do, because obviously they have a market here, they have a base here, they have economic activity here of their area, specialisms. So I would want them to be here and pay tax also. Now if the rates are unfavorable and they're going out, you can blame me. I'm changing the rates to favorable rates. I'd rather have them come.
But no estimate of how many you will get and how much revenue?
There is, obviously. In government, nothing works without estimates. Otherwise, it's not justified in the cabinet when we take a call. It has to be justified in the cabinet also.
Ma'am, but for this entire rule that you've come out with, that they must pay tax somewhere and you want them to pay tax here.
Being NRIs.
This is also a category which is perhaps under the super rich, 42%. They're looking for cheaper tax domiciles. And that is why perhaps that they've gone. So is this again part of this, not a witch hunt, but the government's attempt also as a surgical strike against black money? Because
no, that's not true. That's not true. I think this time I've used the income tax to send this clear message and give a direction that middle income groups, lower middle income groups should have more money in their hands. And I've also taken this big call on removing a lot of exemptions. Over the years, 120 exemptions. Even before you go, I'll give you a list of exemptions this country's direct taxation code is laden with. We have removed about 70 of them. And because it's so indispensable, we brought some into the newer system. I could have very well said, in another 3 or 4 years, we will simplify the direct taxation, the personal income tax, and we'll come up with a very simple framework. I could have said that. But if I were to do it after 3 years, why say it? And if I do it now, I will have to do it as much as clearly serving the purpose of simplifying the tax.
No, ma'am, the point I was trying to make was you've also changed the rules of the residency. You've changed the number of dates that will be counted for what will be an NRI
Yes, I understand
resident.
that. I understand your question.
So, but my point was also that to make sure that the people who are used to not paying taxes, but they do their dhanda here, they do their business here, isn't that the real attempt to catch them?
I don't want to use the word catch. You're doing danda here, using your expression. Your business is here, your interests
So they ought
are
to
here.
pay taxes.
You will help the country. Paying a tax is not a punishment. If the rates are very high, yes, it's a punishment. If I'm bringing down to reasonable rates, wouldn't you want to give that money towards building India?
The fertilizer subsidy has always been a very politically charged one. You have taken courage enough to say you will bring down the fertilizer subsidy. Hopefully this will encourage the use of manure and other organic fertilizers. Having made the start, it's not clear to me how much are you going to reduce the fertilizer subsidy this year, and do you see it going down to zero over the years?
We are in fact through the ministry spending a lot of time engaging with the stakeholders to understand how best it can be rationalized. I've had quite a few of those sittings. I have not specified the numbers yet in the budget because we are talking to a lot of people to see how best, because at the moment even the modus is questionable. Because you're giving it through the companies which are all right. There was a time when you needed them. There's a time when there's even now a lot of need for it, chemical fertilizers. Today when the emphasis is moving towards organic, we also should see how there can be a reasonable combination of the two rather than overload our lands with chemical fertilizers.
Yeah.
Ma'am, as a young Indian, it was very heartening to hear phrases like artificial intelligence, data analytics in your budget speech. You've given a big thrust to startups with what you've done with ESOPs, as well as changed the rules for tax deduction and all of that. But in the fine print, we also saw there's going to be a 1% TDS levy as far as e-commerce companies goes and transactions go, and by a government which is so dedicated to Startup India and to Digital India. Is this just being seen as a new source of revenue? What is the rationale?
What is the TDS? What is the TDS?
Tax deduction.
Yeah, what is the
seller.
TDS? Eventually, and if you're a taxpayer, that's going to be offset. So that's not a new tax.
Okay.
That's not an additional burden. It is more something, if you are in the taxable net and that has got to be offset, it's going to be set off. So how do I at all have any trail of commercial transactions? Who at the end of the day is going to pay?
Right.
So why should every TDS be seen as an additional tax? You are given an option to offset it.
I've been arguing for years that one of the lowest hanging fruit to collect tax, every finance minister loves to increase the tax rate on cigarettes because tobacco is a health hazard. But let's face it, BDs are as much a health hazard as cigarettes. The tax differential is huge and rising. I have seen calculations that if you equated the two over a few years, you can get maybe 1.5–2% of GDP. And yet, budget after budget, you find that the differential between cigarette and BDs goes up. Of course, we know that the BD industry has a larger employment potential. But as I said, should you be employing people to kill others? It is not the best way to employ people. There should be other ways. So why don't you have a program to equate the tax on BDs and cigarettes? You can face it.
I agree. There's got to be a lot of awareness building happening. There's got to be a lot of alternative jobs which can be given to people here. And we have to spend a lot of time convincing people that they should look at industries which are healthier, activities which are healthier. Till then, it will have a direct bearing on a lot of people who are sitting and working in cottage industry mode, and therefore, sadly.
Ma'am, talking of cottage industries, and you've tried to give a thrust to MSMEs clearly, also by increasing custom duty. You talked about that in your budget speech as well, how you want to have a level playing field. This kind of protectionism, are you also perhaps sending a signal that Make in India manufacturing SMEs will only thrive when you increase custom duty, and you've also done it, for example, on electric vehicle parts and things like that, when the auto sector is still in trouble.
There are two things which guided us in making that list on whom the import duty has been levied. You're talking about that. One, the kind of goods which are coming, which are listed there, are goods which are manufactured in India also, largely by the MSME, and certainly equal if not better quality. Two, most of them, in fact most of them, are final consumption goods. They are not raw materials, they are not intermediary products. Should we import goods which we are producing anyway in this country only because they are coming dirt cheap? Is that really something which we are going to have to live with, or is it something which we can avoid? Are they essential to our consumption? And who is to decide what is essential? Yes, the consumer will have to decide. But does it mean that he has to decide at the cost of dumping of goods which are happening versus the Indian manufacturer? So we've taken a call, and I've spent a lot of time on this, that if they are raw material or if they are intermediary, of course we have to be careful because it affects a lot of productivity and production capacities which exist in this country. But final consumption goods, dumped, some of them very poor quality. Is there no way in which an Indian industry can be helped to capture that market back again? That's why
what you're saying goes completely against the fundamental premises of free trade.
Agreed, absolutely. But right, dumping is not free trade either.
You have there is a WTO mechanism to take care of dumping, and as far as dumping is concerned, it should not come into the argument because there is a separate ability to do it. But when you have an import duty, it applies to everybody. It's not applying only to the dumpers. Therefore, if you only catch the dumpers, that's a different matter from having an import duty that applies to all. The question that you ask, if I can make, should I import it? And the answer of entire free is yes. Otherwise, the United States, other people can make things that we export. Why should then buy it from us? You will get to a stage where there is no international trade at all, and we all go behind protectionist barriers, and the net effect is a collapse of welfare for all. The whole point about this is you specialize in certain items, you don't produce others, you don't produce everything. Merely because you have the capacity of producing it to say, therefore I should not import it, is like going back to the Nehru-Indira Gandhi regime, utterly failed, and I would have thought that your regime would say, having learned from that, will say, I will never go back to that.
I'd certainly not like to go back to that. But the mechanisms that exist not just in India but in any other country against dumping, which is so consistently happening, will have to be strengthened, and I will work to strengthen that. But till then, I will not allow Indian industries also to die, particularly those who are in minuscule micro medium sector. I think we'll have to have carefully balanced both of them. All this balance should have happened long time ago, and if they haven't happened, and we are facing industries which are struggling at a time when Indian economy needs more jobs, to just turn away saying, no, I'm in favor of free trade, be damned with you, is also not going to help the economy.
Ma'am, is it correct also that an employer's contribution to the EPF, if it goes beyond 7 lakh, is now going to be taxed? And if that is indeed the case, the rationale behind that move? Because at one point we're looking at consumption, we want to give more money to the people.
That's what we have done in most of the cases, yes.
So this is just something that...
Exemptions are being removed, that's about it. So and if you want to still be in the old system, you can continue to be in the old system.
So if you want people to also get eventually, I'm guessing your mindset is that you want people...
But some of the exemptions are continuing in the new, which have a slant towards employment, which have a slant towards small income generating employers, and so on. So the list of exemptions will explain it to you.
So the question I want to ask on behalf of all Indians is, should they start preparing themselves that it may be a roadmap when all of this could be phased out? Was that one of the directions that you want to go down?
In income tax?
Yes.
I mean, yes. Eventually, we should have a system which is going to be simpler, less burdensome, both in compliance and also the tax incidence. So, I am looking at moving towards a way in which, moving towards a simpler, easy compliance based system.
The off-budget borrowing, you didn't give a figure in the budget speech, but there are people who say, we need to take both the fiscal deficit and could you give us the figures? What would be
They are attached in the annexure.
Okay, just briefly.
Annexure to
Is it substantial? Is it rising?
The figures are given where they have to be given.
I see.
shall not burden the consolidated fund where I don't need to burden them.
All right. Real estate. People said you've done nothing for real estate. This is one sector where every year people
That's not true. I've given an extension of 1 more year.
You think that's enough?
For their tax holiday. I mean, you don't expect the government to give it for 10 years right at the beginning.
Okay.
Let them show the difference in 1 year now. And that 1 year is an extended 1 year. It was only applicable till this year. We've extended it for tax holiday for 1 more year. That's also given by us.
There was a proposal by some people that, a lot of these companies that are unable to finish, let's create a bad bank, take over all those.
I've already given that scheme. Amounts have been released. I announced it, didn't I? We've created a last mile funding asset management institution, investment mechanism through which monies for those incomplete projects will be given. The last number which was given to me 2 days or 3 days ago, I don't want to recall it, but I will give you the information. The monies are going into an escrow account. As and when they progress with completing the project and then selling it off, these monies will be released to them. That was a mechanism which I announced. It's already started implementation. These are projects which are incomplete all over the country which has been taken up, provided they are RERA registered.
Ma'am, you gave a very strong message to all depositors today, saying your money is safe, and you stressed on that. I think you repeated that particular sentence twice, and you've also decided that banks
Insurance should be
done, and you've also said there's no need for recapitalization of banks.
No, I didn't say that. I said banks have been amalgamated. In fact, there are 2 mentions. One is even later where we are trying to give them tax concessions because of the burden that they're bearing as a result of amalgamation. Here, amalgamations have happened. 10 banks have become 4. They've been given funds for their growth. They've been given recapitalization fund. 3,60,000 crores or something has been given in the last few years. And I've said all that. I didn't say I won't give money to recapitalization.
Okay.
As and when the situation arises,
so you will review the situation perhaps after the internal
I have not
consolidation
stated
process.
any amount right up front. That doesn't mean that I won't do 3,60,000 crores in the last few years, and you think I'm going to raise
taxpayers' money as well.
So I have to have a clear balance.
The RBI transfers came as a godsend in the current financial years. There was a large dividend and there was like a one-time capital transfer. But certainly there could be further capital transfers too. For the current year, are you talking to the Reserve Bank about a further capital transfer or only a dividend?
Only a dividend is which comes normally by routine process. I have not started talking. I don't intend starting any talk with the Reserve Bank on
capital transfers. Okay.
I can see your office is queuing me to bring the interview to an end. But before I do that, I want to just ask you one question, ma'am. Going into this budget, how much pressure did you feel? I know we in the media did not help, calling it a now or never moment, growth at any cost. Did it get to you at any point? Did you feel it?
No, I think it was good that media kept doing it because it kept the heat on all of us. And it also constantly gave us the input of what is being spoken in the markets by the industry leaders, although we were also directly talking to all of them. It's nice that the media engages in detail like this, and I'm quite okay with it.
So you were able to withstand our pressure. We can continue to do that.
We'll do more of it.
We'll do more of it.
Keep it coming. Welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Sitharaman, for giving us this interview.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.